You know, you can take any problem, anything you got to him, he's got an answer for it. You might come ask me something this morning, it might take me a month to figure it out. But he's got an answer. We may not always get it right then, but the Lord will give us an answer if we'll just wait on it. Good to be in the house of the Lord this morning. If you got your Bible, turn to the book of Job. Book of Job, right after the book of Esther. It's in between the book of Esther and the book of Psalms. Book of Job, chapter number 1. We'll read down through this whole chapter, 22 verses. Let's be much in prayer this morning. Lord, help us. Book of Job, chapter number 1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she-asses, and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men in the east. And his sons went and feasted in their house every one his day, and sent and called for the 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sinned and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, and perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doeth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made an hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. And there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And there came a messenger unto Job, and said, The oxen were plowing, the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabines fell upon them, and took them away. Yea, and they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped, only to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, The fire of God is fallen from heaven, and hath burned upon the sheep and the servants, and consumed them. And I only am escaped to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, The Chaldeans made 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away. Yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped only to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the 4 corners of the house. And it fell upon the young men, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Then Job arose, and rent his mantle, and shaved his head, and fell down upon the ground and worshipped, and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Brother Greg, if you would pray with us.
Our Heavenly Father, Lord, as we come to you this morning, and as we've had the bread of life broken before us, Heavenly Father, we pray, Lord, that we would glean a lot from this message this morning. We realize, Lord, that how Job presented himself, Lord, even though calamity struck him, and how he presented himself upright. And we just pray, Lord, that we'd use the same pattern that Job used in our lives, in our daily living for thee, Lord, that even when things comes about us, that seemingly the world's falling apart, help us to cling to thee. We pray, Lord, that you be with Brother Rick, just stir him in a mighty way, Heavenly Father. And if there be one here that don't know you as their personal Savior, Lord, we only pray that today be the day of salvation for them. For in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Just read the book of Job, chapter 1 and verse 1 through 22. I want to talk to you a little while this morning. This is a very familiar passage of Scripture. Most folks knows the story of Job. I want to talk to you for a while about this man Job this morning on the subject of a man that paid the price. Now, the book of Job is probably the oldest book in the Bible if you get to studying it. And you think about all these things that were going on in Job's life. I don't know if you've ever stopped and thought, Job didn't have a Bible or a book to run to get some encouragement and help when all this happened in his life. I mean, can you imagine how all these things happened to him in a matter of one day? Down through this first chapter, you see he lost everything he had. Lost his finances, lost just about everything he had, all his cattle, lost his family. You know, I was thinking there the last few days, you know, we better be glad we've got a Bible when tragedy strikes in our life or things happen. You know, we can run to this old book and read about men but like Job and see how they handled things when things happened in their lives. You know, this Bible's our schoolmaster. It teaches us, a lot of different things. But I've thought a whole lot about that the last few days. Job didn't have a Bible to run to look at. He had to depend on God. Had to depend on his faith. Had to depend on, just God totally when all these things happened. You'll find even down in verse number 6, Satan came along during this time. You'll find this chapter how that Job was hedged in. Satan couldn't touch him unless God allowed him to. And you know, I thought, old Satan, man, he roams around everywhere. And he's faithful in what he does. He's going to attack, and he's going to keep attacking, and he's going to keep attacking. That's the reason we need to pray that God put a hedge around us. You need to pray that God put a hedge around your church this morning. Because when God's got that hedge around it, Satan can't do one thing unless God allows him to. I know the Bible says Satan's the power of the hour, but he can't be every place at one time like God can. He don't control things the way God does. Yeah, he's powerful, he's a spirit, but he cannot do one thing unless God allows it. So here's a man by the name of Job, the greatest man in the East, the most wealthy man in that part of the country. Lost everything he had. And I've wondered the last few days, how would me and you react? Would we still love God the way we do right now if we lost everything today? How would you feel if you went home this morning and the phone started ringing? Say you've lost this. Somebody says, well, your house is gone, your children's died. Would we still really love God the way we say we do? Now here's a man by the name of Job. I believe he loved God just as much after this happened as before it happened. Now, Job went through some things after this happened. You'll find out in a few minutes he got angry at some men. And Job even gets to the place that the Lord has to question him about some things. Bring some conviction into Job's life when all this happens. But would we really love God as much as we say we do if we lost everything? Would we still pray as much as what we say we do? Would we still serve Him in the same manner if we lost everything in the matter of one day? Now this wasn't spread out over years. You read this, it's pretty much in one day. All this happens to a man by the name of Job. I thought, how would a man's nerves handle that? I believe most of us probably had a heart attack before that day was over. We'd had a nervous breakdown. We'd been broke down so much. But Job knows something about God. God's been so good to me this morning to bless me. There ain't no way I ought to ever stop serving Him no matter what happens. You'll even find in this chapter how Job's wife seems to turn on him. And a lot of times we'll preach down at Job's wife. But man, that woman went through some things in one day. Had a lot on her mind. Had a lot go the other direction she wasn't expecting to happen. But you look in verse number 20, the Bible said, then Job arose and rent his mantle, shaved his head, and fell upon the ground and worshipped. In the midst of all this that happened to Job, Job Job still had a good attitude. He still worshiped in verse number 20. Verse 21, the Bible said, naked came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Verse 22, and the Bible said, in all this Job sinned not, or charged God foolishly. So after all this happened, no matter what happened in his life, Job still worshiped. He put that first and foremost in his life. He still worshiped. He had a good attitude in verse 21. He said, blessed be the name of the Lord. Then in verse 22, Bible said in all that he didn't sin or charge God foolishly. So Job was going about this in the right way. And I don't know how he got through it. I mean, I know he got through it with God, but he still had a good attitude. He still worshiped. And he sinned not during all these things. So I want to talk to you for a little while this morning on a man that paid the price. As you'll study your Bible from Genesis to Revelation, I don't know if you'll ever find a man that paid a higher price than Job did. You'll find one man in this Bible that paid a higher price, and that was Jesus Christ. He suffered, bled, and died, gave his life, conquered death, hell, and the grave, and man, he's coming back again one day. Amen. You'll find nobody in this Bible, I believe, that suffered like this man Job other than Jesus Christ. Bible said there in Job 21:22 that he sinned not even after he suffered like this. But I want to give you three things in way of introduction this morning as we get into this. Three things I believe that you could see in Job's life. And these three things that happened in Job's life, I believe we're going to have them in our lives if we ever live the Christian life the way Job did. If tragedy ever strikes your life, you're going to have to do these things Job did. When trouble come into Job's life, I want you to notice he didn't blame God. How many times do you see when trouble comes, people will say, why did God let this happen? Or they'll begin to blame God. Then when they begin to blame God, there'll be some other things happen. The Bible said in Job 14:1, the Bible said, man that is born of woman is of few days and full of trouble. We're going to have trouble in this world, but a lot of times, a lot of the trouble we have, we created ourselves. Then we'll go look at God and say, God, why'd you do this to me? Most of the time, if we just slow down a little bit and think about it, it's all us. It's not Him. God don't bring trouble and strife. Sure, sometimes He'll have to bring chastisement, but we bring that on ourselves. Now, when trouble comes, don't blame God. The second thing Job didn't do, he didn't blame God. And I don't really see in this first chapter, Job, now, he didn't get real bitter. You know, a lot of times when things come our way, we'll get bitter. We don't need to do that. We need to be, as Christian people, we need to get sweeter and sweeter as time goes by. Closer the Lord gets to coming back. You know, we don't need to be bitter. I mean, a lot of folks will get bitter and they'll get mad at other people. And you know, that stuff gets contagious sometimes. You ever notice that in the church? Somebody will blame God and somebody else gets to looking at them and it'll get contagious and they'll go that way. Then somebody else will get bitter and it'll pop over here and it'll pop over there. Bitterness is something that will destroy you. It'll lead at you. Don't get bitter when things happen. Something else that happened in Job's life here that we've got to do also if we ever live this Christian life. We just simply got to believe God. The Bible said that Job disbelieved God and he just worshiped. He had a good attitude when all this is going on. Now the best we can do, we're going to have trouble. And let me say, when trouble comes, you know the best thing you can do? Just believe God, run to His house and get worship. God had to come by and show Job some things in his life. After these men attacked him, then Job has some conviction on his life, and Job does something up toward the end of this book where God releases him for some things and God begins to bless him again. So number one, I want to look this morning for a few minutes how Job faced calamities. Now there's some steps that happens in Job's life. Now let me say, these things didn't happen to Job because he was rich. But these steps happened in Job's life, and one of the first things that happened in Job's life, he was rich. Now, riches is not going to send you to hell. They're not going to send you to hell. But riches can hurt you a lot of times if you ain't careful. Now Job was a rich man. The Bible said he was the greatest man of the East. Had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she-asses, and a great household. The Bible said in Matthew 19 and verse 24, the Bible said, and again I say unto you, and it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Job was a rich man, but Job handled his riches in the right manner. The Bible tells us it's going to be hard for a rich man to get into heaven if they ain't careful. They're going to put their riches and everything they got before God, before their family, and before anything that God wants them to do. And I've thought the last few days, how did Job serve God being so rich? How did Job pray and serve God in his life the way he did? He simply worshiped and believed God. And I believe that he thanked God for where his riches came from. Let me say this morning, don't let riches get you. Don't let your pocketbook get you this morning. Right. You say, well, my pocketbook's going to get me by. I'm doing pretty good on that. Better be careful. You might have it today and it may be gone tomorrow. There's a lot of people 8 or 9 years ago thought that pocketbook was going to get them through. Remember when the economy fell in, there's a lot of people lost that 401k that's depending on. Now they ain't got nothing to fall back on. They forgot about God and they don't have anything. So this man by the name of Job had a lot of riches. But Job used that in the right manner. The Bible says every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess He is Lord one day. So let me say, when Job faced these calamities, he done it with riches in his life. Then they were all gone. You think about this second step that crippled Job. The first one, he had riches, but he became bankrupt. One day Job was rich, the next day he was broke. Now, let me say, if you're trusting in what you've got, you better be real careful, man. You better be laying some things up on the other side. Laying some treasures up in heaven. He was rich, and the next thing you know, when he was bankrupt, everything he had was gone. He was crippled by bankruptcy. And you know, when you study this, it took old-time religion to get Job to look up and say, blessed be the one that took it all away. I mean, Job was a good man according to this book. But it took him losing everything to look up and say, he's blessed. He's the one that gave it, he wanted to take it away. Now, if he was bankrupt, the Bible said he sinned not. Now, if you lose it all this morning, you know, we better thank God we still got Him. I mean, if we lose it all, we're still rich. I mean, I'm a farmer, man. I just barely get by most of the time. I mean, that's the way most of us live, from one paycheck to the next. But you know, we got a God in heaven that's got it all. I mean, we may lose it all today, but we ought to be just like Job. Just keep worshiping. This thing started out with him being rich, then he became bankrupt. And I want you to look at the third thing that happened in his calamity. And this is something I don't know that I can handle or anybody in this building can handle. Job was crushed by bereavement. You may say, well, I've took a loved one down to the graveyard before. How many of us have ever took 10 caskets at one time down to the graveyard? Now, we're talking about Job lost all his servants too. But I'm talking about, the Bible said he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. So here's a man that's been struck with tragedy, a calamity, having to go down to the graveyard with 10 caskets. I've never heard of that before. I don't know of anybody that's ever had to take that many children one time down to the graveyard, down to the funeral home. All killed in one day. Can you imagine how heartbroken Job was? You know, it'd be bad enough to lose one child. Most people never really gets over that, losing one child. They may get to where they can get by, but it's still always there because that child was a part of it. But here's a man that's having to bury 10. You know, we love our children. And you know, God's put something down on the inside of us that we ought to love them. I've got 2 of them. I love them more every day. And I ought to love them more tomorrow than I did today. God give them to me to take care of. You know, I was thinking last night, me and my wife's got one in heaven right now. And man, she's never totally got over that, my wife's not. She'll still wake up at nights about having that child and it died. Man, that's something that never leaves you. But I thought, how could you imagine losing 10 at one time? Could you imagine day and time we living in, going down to the funeral home, think people coming through, paying their respects, and 10 caskets sitting there in front of them. Then having to go down to the graveyard and put them in 10 different holes down there. Man, this man had to be heartbroken. Man, I was thinking about last night, an old preacher friend. Some of you may have heard of Brother Billy Kelly that used to come through these mountains. Used to sing at all these camp meetings and stuff in Monterey. Lost a child when he was just a few days old. And man, he said he was standing in that funeral home that night, folks coming by, and said he got to looking down that casket at that little old boy. And man, this old preacher could sing. They said, man, he stood over that casket and looked down in that casket and got to sing. And I don't know about tomorrow, but I know the one that holds tomorrow. Right. Man, old Job knows the one that holds tomorrow. I mean, man, you think about what he's went through. He's lost everything he had, then lose 10 children at one time. Then you look in chapter number 2, in verse number 7, and the Bible said, so went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his feet into his crown. Now Satan could not touch him when this first began. God told him to take everything you have, but don't touch it. Then he comes in chapter number 2, Satan comes before the Lord again, and God lets the hedge down. I mean, he pretty much asked God, Satan did, does he serve you for naught? And God let the hedge down and said, touch him, but don't kill him. And these things that the devil struck Job with, these sore boils, it was a fatal disease back in that day. There was no cure for it. From the top of his head to his toes, he had boils all over him. I don't know if you've ever got a boil on you. One is something that can about put you down. It's something that can hurt in a way, man, it'll just keep you up at night. Could you imagine this man having boils from the top of his head all the way to his feet? Covered, but he still sinned not. Didn't charge God, didn't blame God foolishly. So here's a man that's lost everything he had, lost his children, and now he's lost his health. Now we think we got it real bad when we get a cold. We think we've got it real bad if we get behind on one meal. We think we've got it real bad if we don't have what the neighbor across the road's got. But here's a man that's lost everything, lost his finances, lost his family, and now he's losing his health. And you look at something else in chapter number 2 and verse number 9. The Bible said, then said his wife unto him, doest thou still retain their integrity, curse God and die? Now I know Job's wife went through a lot. We're real hard on Job's wife. But you know what? It'd have been good if his wife might have looked at him and tried to encourage him maybe just a little bit. Man, she's turned her back on him right here in verse number 9 for just a little bit. It was sad to lose his wealth, sad to have lost his children, lost his health, but when your wife says, curse God and die, then Job said, you're talking like a foolish woman. Job said, I'm going to go on and trust God no matter what you think, no matter what anybody else thinks. And I'm going to tell you something this morning, family can hurt you more than anybody. Your family can hurt you around the house of God. Family will say things to you that nobody else will say. And family knows just how to get to you sometimes. And I know family hurts more than anything when you can't get them to come to the house of God. There's going to be times that, your family is going to be the most critical thing to you. And it hurts when they go the opposite direction. Now, when these children, they're under my roof, they're going to do what I say they get up so old. They're going to go to church, they're going to do where I put them at. But I know there's going to come a time and a day that they're going to do what they want to do. And there's going to come that time they may go a direction that I don't want them to. There ain't much I can do about it, but keep praying. But God may be a promise in this Bible. If I raise them right, they'll come back to it. That's right. So your family is something that's really going to hurt you sometimes. It's a blessing when you still serve God no matter what, though. Here's a man by the name of Job that's lost his whole family, and then his wife speaking bad to him, but he's still serving God. Man, I read a story one time. It's probably been 10 or 15 years ago. I thought about it last night. This was several years back over in England. There was a group of what they would call so-called preachers to meet over there and went to went to a college over there. It was a Catholic place. It's where the Catholics train their bishops at. It was time for these men to graduate. And when these men graduate, they bring them up, they give them their certificates, and they place each one of them in a church somewhere. And they used to have to stay there like 5 or 6 years at this time. But back during this, when this certain graduation was going on, there was a young preacher in there. And this old boy turned out to be a real preacher. For about 3 months before that graduation, God got to getting hold of his heart. He got to going out in the streets of England witnessing to people. Got to going out on the streets and preaching. Got to reading his Bible and finding out what they was teaching him wasn't right. This old boy got to preaching, witnessing to the drunks, witnessing to the harlots, and he was winning people to Jesus. God burdened him over the streets of England. During that graduation, he stood up before they called his name. Asked the bishop if he would place him in the streets of England instead of a church. They said, that head bishop said, no, you got the best grades anybody in the school. We're going to place you one of the biggest churches we've got. See, we're not going to let you bring a disgrace on the Catholic Church by doing something like that. They said all of a sudden when this is going on, there's a little old woman's popped up, said, hold it, honey. Said, I'll go with you. Said, come on, we'll go to the streets of England. Said, if they don't want to help you there, said, it was his wife. You know, it's good when a man's got a wife that'll stand with him, that'll pop up beside him no matter where he's going, no matter what he's going to do, and say, I'm going to stick with you. They said that old boy and girl got out of that Catholic church. He went to preaching. Said he probably don't know how many years he preached, but they said when he died, they said there was some 15,000 people came by to see that casket. Said a number of them was drunks, a number of them was harlots. And every one of them came by and shook his wife's hand and said, he came to where we was at. And you know that boy man ought to have done that if it hadn't been for his wife encouraging. He's going to have a lot of blessings in heaven one day, a lot of rewards. Because he stepped out and went where God wanted him instead of where man wanted him to go. Had a good woman beside him to back him up and went with him. So Job's lost all these things here in chapter number 1. Lost his riches, lost his family, lost his health. Even his wife went to back talking. Then you get the second thing that happened to Job. He had these trials there in chapter 1 and part of chapter number 2. All these calamities. And when all these calamities is going, I want you to see how Job faced some criticism. Had 3 friends that come by and wanted to talk to him. You'd think they wanted to come by and cheer him up, but they didn't. You ever notice when people goes to criticizing, a lot of times they're real jealous. It'll be over jealousy. Most criticism is not instructive. It becomes destructive a lot of times. You ever notice when people want this crowd that wants to start criticizing around the church, they'll a lot of times want to go criticizing the singing. They'll want to go to criticizing the praying. They'll want to go criticizing the worship or the preaching. But you know, I made my mind up a long time ago, no matter how much they criticize me, no matter how much they criticize those that are doing right in the house of God, I'm just going to keep worshiping. Right. We let a lot of people bring us down with criticism. You know, you'll just let that stuff run off your back just like water and forget about it. Most of them that want to criticize, they don't know nothing about God no way. And it's a shame there's a lot of people quit over criticism. Don't pay no attention to this crowd a lot of times. Job, if you'll notice, Job had been stricken with this sickness unto death, and here comes these 3 comforters. Now, I ain't got time to get into all this. We'd have to cover reading the whole book of Job to get into what all 3 of these men did. Let me say, if I ever get sick like Job was, if I ever get down to my back, get in the hospital, man, I hope you or nobody else comes to me and tries to comfort me like these 3 friends did. And you know, most time when I'm sick, I don't want nobody around. I'm just soon to be left alone, just soon to be able to lay there, rest, and get better. But here's 3 friends that come along, and you'd think they'd try to encourage you. But when they get there, they sit there for 7 days and 7 nights. And they don't say one word to Job. Then you'll find in chapter number 3 where Job made his mistake, messed up, he finally opened his mouth. And you know, I found out a lot of times that's when I mess up or make my mistake, when I open my mouth. There's a lot of times we just need to be quiet. We just need to walk off a lot of times, but we can't do it. We won't bite this tongue. Then we'll say something and we'll regret it the rest of our life sometimes what we've said. Now here's a man by the name of Job. He's finally opened his mouth, and this is when his trouble begins with these 3 men. And you'll find that one man, if you'll really start reading the rest of the book of Job, the one man tells Job he's a hypocrite. So you're saying all this and doing something totally opposite. But the Bible said in Job 1, he was perfect, upright, and one that feared God to shoot evil. Job was a man that hated God, he hated the devil, and Job wasn't a hypocrite. I believe Job lived exactly the way he's supposed to. He was even making intercession in chapter number 1 for his family by worship. You'll find out there's another one comes by later on. The one said he was a hypocrite, the other one said, Job, you're a liar. And Job looks at him pretty much says, can't hardly believe what you say. You know, Job said, pretty much told these men what God said, and they tried to call him a liar. He was telling them the truth. Could you imagine that being laying there on your deathbed, one of them calls you a hypocrite, then one of them calls you a liar, then the third one comes along and says, Job, you're a swindler, you've cheated everybody. So that's how you've got what you've got, you've cheated. But the Bible said Job sinned not. Then Job begins to answer these men. They would have been trying to comfort him, but Job begins to answer them in probably about 3 different ways. When Job first answered these men, he got angry. That was his mistake. He flew off the handle to begin with. He was a man that loved God, but he took all he could take. He got a little angry. And I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't give you a dime for a man that got a little bit of a temper. You can't take but so much. I mean, you'll find in this Bible, Jesus got mad. Hey, Jesus got mad over when that crowd turned his house of God into a flea market. They was buying, selling, trading, doing everything ungodly. The Bible said he whipped them out of there. So, man, we better be real careful what we do around the house of God. And he might burn the place down if you ain't careful. You know, Job told this crowd right here, they was a bunch of physicians. Said there was a bunch of quacks, is what he said. Job got angry with them. You know, people that get angry a lot of times and quit church over what the man of God preaches. Man of God's giving you what's in this Bible straight, and he's telling you the truth, you ought to never get mad. I've seen them get mad at Sunday school teachers and walk off and not come back. I've seen them get mad over things that goes on around the house of God. If it's done decently in order, they ought to not get mad. They ought to control themselves. They ought to ask God to help them. So Job's got mad at these men to begin with. And Job began to answer them in agony. If you'll study on out this, like I said, we ain't got time to get in. I'll just give you a little bit of highlights of what went on. He pretty much said, you 3 are trying to kill me. You're trying to destroy me. He was agonizing in his soul. He's lost all this, don't understand what's going on. And here come these 3 pretty much trying to kill him. You know, it's sad when Job had to look at his 3 comforters and say, I thought you was my friends, but you're doing all the best you can to hurt me. You know, but God, I believe old Job got to remember in his mind, oh, God had a hedge around him. Something had to happen. You know, if we've ever lived in a day and time we need that hedge, it's right now. I tell you, moms, dads, you better pray God hedges them young'uns in. You better pray that He'll hedge them children in. We're living in a nation right now, we better pray God hedges this nation in. We're facing things, man, we ain't faced in a long time. But we better pray that God will hedge this place in and take care of us just the way He always has. Now, Job answered his comforters, though he got a little aggravated, he got a little angry. But you'll begin to find out over about Job chapter number 16, I believe it is. Job started answering these men with a little bit of assurance. I mean, you look in chapter 16 over there, here's the good part. Let me make sure, I believe it's in chapter number 16. Down about verse number 19. Bible said, also now, behold, my witness is in heaven, and my record is on high. Now, notice Job's told these fellows, you're not keeping my record. He said, my record's on high, and it's being kept by somebody else. These men were trying to judge him like they were keeping his record. You know, you need to stop and think this morning. I ain't keeping your record, and ain't nobody in this building keeping your record. There's somebody on high keeping your record. Job told these men, they'd been blaming him with all these things, said, you ain't the record keeper. You don't know how I've lived. So there's one in heaven only knows. Let me say, there's some books in heaven, man, we're going to be judged by. There's some books on high this morning. Man, when this thing's over with, man, the saved are going to go to the judgment seat of Christ one day. We're going to be judged what we've done. Then in the end, when all this comes down, there's going to be a great high throne judgment for the lost people. And they're going to be judged out of those books also, what they've done. Now Job said, man, you're not keeping my record. You know, God knows everything about me and you. He knows why we're here today, and He knows why we'll be here tonight. He knows what you're going to do every day this week before you ever do it. Now I want you to notice, Job answers these men with a little bit of assurance over in Job chapter 19. We'll be done here in just a minute. I got just a little bit more I want to show you. But I want you to listen to Job's words in chapter 19, verse 23 through 27. Bible said in verse 23, oh, that my words were written, oh, that they were printed in a book, that they were graven with an iron pen and lead in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and He that shall stand at the later day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God. Whom shall I see for myself, and my eyes shall behold, and not another, though my reins be consumed within me. Now notice Job started answering these men with a little bit of assurance. He told them, man, you ain't keeping my record. But Job said, I want to tell you something with a little bit of assurance. Because He lives, I'm going to live. Right. You ever stop and thought about that? Because He lives, we're going to live. If that old tomb could have held Him, this grave could hold me and you. Job starts giving these men a little bit of assurance. He said, man, death's not going to hold me because He lives. You know, man, we ought to say, glory, our Redeemer lives this morning. We're serving a living God. We got a lot of this crowd out there serving a dead God. These men have been aggravating Job to death, trying to kill him. Then he says, man, you don't know my record. Then he gives them some assurance, man, there's one that's alive and waiting. Then I want you to notice something else we mentioned when we began. Well, I mean, we've seen how Job's tragedy was, seen how he's criticized. But Job had to get under conviction also in the rest of this book before God would ever release him and bless him again. You know, that heavy hand of conviction, man, is something sometimes that won't let you sleep. That heavy hand of conviction is something that will make you run to somebody sometimes and say, please forgive me. You know, I'm afraid we got a lot of folks that need to go to each other and make things right. You know, there's a lot of churches that God's never going to bless till there's some things made right between people. You know, you go to somebody and try to make that thing right. Get it off yourself. If they won't listen to you, it's still on them. You make that thing right with them, make it right with God, God will bless you. You know, when lost people can't eat, when they can't sleep, when that conviction sets in, that's when God will really do something. You can get over here in Job chapter number 29, chapter 30 and chapter 31. I can't got the time to read all them. But you'll find how that God had to knock the pride out of Job. I believe Job may have got to the place when all this happened. He didn't realize, he thought it was just him sometimes. Because if you get in Job chapter 29, chapter 30 and chapter 31, Job said something over there 195 times in these 3 chapters. He said, me, my, and mine. Me, my, and mine. When you get to listening to Job in chapter 29, chapter 30, and chapter 31, I believe Job may have got to the place sometimes he thought it was just him. But you know, we need to get to the place in life where we realize it's not just us, but it's about God. It's about Him. Oh, Job said those things 150 sometimes. Me, mine, mine. You know, if we get me, mine, mine out of the way, God bless us a whole lot more. We'll get to feeling sorry for ourselves, say, poor old me. Or we'll get to wanting something and we don't realize how it's just about Him. You know, it ought to just be about Him when we come to the house of God. I believe God had to knock a little bit of that pride out of Job. You say, how do you figure that? He brought a little bit of conviction upon him, and God had to rebuke Job. You say, where do you find that at? You go to Job chapter 38. Job chapter 38 and verse number 4. God begins to rebuke Job and ask him a few questions. You look in verse 38 and verse number 4. The Bible said, where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare thou if thou hast understanding. Now, God asked Job a lot of questions in these chapters. He said, Job, where was you at when I created all this? He said, Job, did you do this? Job had to say no. He couldn't say nothing. You said, why? Because God's the creator. He's the one that created all this. Job pretty much had to say I wasn't there. Man, God stood out of nothing and spoke it all into existence. God said, Job, was you there when I done this? You look in Job 38 and verse number 12. God said, Job, where was you this morning when the sun come up? He said, hast thou continued the morning since thy days, and caused the day spring to know this place? You know, I'm glad I know who will bring the sun up tomorrow. God said, Job, did you let the sun come up? You know, we may be asleep tomorrow morning when it starts up. But I know the one that's going to bring it in. Man, I don't know, Job may have got to the place that he thought, man, it was just him. God said to Job, did you create this? Did you bring the sun up? Then Job goes also to chapter number 39. He asks some more questions. There's so many in here, I ain't got time to read them all. But in chapter 39 and verse 27, he says, doth the eagle mount up at thy command and make her nest on high? God said, Job, can you communicate to the animals? Can you make them do what I can make them do? Oh, Job had to say, no, God, I can't do it. I mean, I believe that God had to rebuke Job just a little bit. You know, there was a time God spoke to a donkey. He spoke to a rooster. He even spoke to a whale one time. He's saying, Job, you can't do these things, but I can. He's trying to open Job's eyes. Now, I want you to notice what Job had to do before God would bless him and release all this. Now, Job's, I guess you could say, in sort of a self-made prison at this point. He's got anger with these men. And you go to Job chapter number 42. The Bible said when Job prayed for his friends, God released him. You go to chapter 42 and verse number 10. The Bible said, and the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Now the Lord didn't turn this away till he done something. The Bible said he simply prayed for his friends. He prayed for those men. It was kind of like these men had become his enemies. One of them called him a hypocrite. One called him a liar. One called him a cheat. But Job prayed and pretty much said, Lord, bless my friends. You know, when you get to the place you can pray for people that's hurting you, God will bless you. You know, one of the hardest things you can ever do is pray for your enemies. But I believe when we go to praying for them, God will release us from some things. God will pour down some spiritual blessings, and that's when we get liberty in the Lord, when He sees that we're praying for those that use us, for those that despise us. I know it's hard to do. It's hard to get down and pray for people. Man, I found that real hard the last couple of years. Man, I had folks that I thought, man, was my best friend stick a knife through you. And man, it hurts. Folks you thought would stick with you through anything. And the next thing you know, man, they're telling everything in the world on you, doing this, that, and the other. But you go to praying for them and God will bless you. I found that to be true. They may still won't talk to me. But man, when you pray for them, God does something. God's going to heap coals up on their head eventually. And God's either going to make them come and try to make that thing right, I mean, there's a lot of folks, man, went to the grave that's never made anything right. And you know, I'd hate to go to the judgment seat of Christ like that. Job simply prayed for these men. God released him. Then you'll find that God gave him twice as much as he had there in chapter 42 and verse number 10. You know, Job never got away from worshiping. Job never got away from giving God honor. There may have been a little while there. I don't know how long this went on, how long he was sick. I don't know how long it went. But there came a place that God had to say, Job, you got to open your eyes. You got to pray for these men. You got to forgive these men. You got to forget what they've done. And you know, God gave Job twice as many cattle, twice to the oxen. The Bible even says he had more sons and daughters, 10 more sons and 3 more daughters. So you know, God was somebody that blessed this man by the name of Job. Now, I don't know of anybody in this Bible you'll find that went through what this man went through. But he still came through it, and God still blessed him. You know, Jesus Christ is the only one that went through more. You know, we ought to stop and think a lot of times when we get to having these pity parties. You look around, there's always somebody a little worse off than you are. There's somebody always going through something a little bit worse than what you're going through. Well, we need to simply do what Job did. We just need to believe God. We just need to continue to worship and giving God the glory. That's all Job simply done. I don't know how, in my mind, I just don't know how he got through all of it. I just hope if something happened like that in my life. And that we can't foresee anything as bad happening to us like did Job. We might have to face a death. But how are we going to handle it when it comes? I want you to stand to your feet for just a minute. I'm done.